everyone, welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Amid continued military conflict with Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump has said Washington has knocked out many Iranian naval and air targets. He also said the U.S. Navy will escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz if necessary, after Iran warned they would attack any vessel trying to pass through the key oil choke point. The South Korean government has evacuated Korean nationals and ethnic Koreans from Iran and Israel to neighboring countries. 24 people in Iran traveled by bus to Turkmenistan, while in Israel, 113 were evacuated to Egypt. President Lee Jae-myung, who's on a state visit to the Philippines, met his counterpart Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and agreed to strengthen cooperation on nuclear power, critical minerals, and the defense industry. We begin this morning in the Middle East, where the U.S. and Israel continue their battle with Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's eradicated Iranian forces, while Iran says it'll continue to fight. Our Park Geon-woo starts us off.
U.S. attacks on Iran continue as President Donald Trump says Iran's been knocked out.
They have no Navy, it's been knocked out. They have no Air Force, it's been knocked out. They have no air detection, that's been knocked out. Their radar has been knocked out. And just about everything's been knocked out.
Speaking during a meeting with Germany's chancellor at the White House on Tuesday, he also said Tehran's missile stockpiles are rapidly declining and that Iran would have attacked first if the U.S. and Israel hadn't acted. Trump also spoke about rising oil prices caused by the crisis, saying they would fall to levels even lower than before once operations are over. On Truth Social, Trump said Washington is willing to provide political risk insurance and guarantees at a reasonable price, adding that the U.S. Navy would escort tankers if necessary to allow the free flow of global energy supplies. This comes as Iran warned it would attack any vessels attempting to cross the Strait of Hormuz, where around 20% of the world's oil shipments pass. Trump also raised concerns that Iran's next leader could be even worse than the previous one, saying that would be the worst-case scenario. According to Iran's Fars news agency, the Assembly of Experts, the constitutional body responsible for selecting Iran's supreme leader, has been meeting virtually, adding that the body is in its final stages of selecting a new supreme leader. According to the New York Times, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, has emerged as the leading candidate to be the successor. Meanwhile, Iranian officials also spoke about their determination to keep fighting.
Now it is time to fight and defend our country, and anything that attempts to distract us or lead us astray will be rejected.
The U.S. consulate in Dubai was set on fire late Tuesday night after being struck by a suspected Iranian drone. Iranian media reported that the headquarters of the Assembly of Experts collapsed on Tuesday following U.S. and Israeli attacks. The Israel Defense Forces also said its Air Force destroyed a secretive Iranian nuclear site near Tehran on Tuesday. With tensions escalating in the Middle East, attention is now on how long the conflict may last. Park Geon-woo, Arirang News.
And South Korea has evacuated about 140 nationals and ethnic Koreans from Iran and Israel to neighboring countries as tensions escalate in the Middle East. Seoul says it's preparing additional measures for stranded travelers, including the possible deployment of military transport aircraft. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
South Korea's foreign ministry says about 140 South Koreans and ethnic Koreans have safely evacuated from Iran and Israel to neighboring countries. According to the ministry on Tuesday, 24 people in Iran, including South Korean nationals, departed Tehran early Tuesday aboard buses arranged by the Korean embassy. After traveling east and staying overnight at a stopover, they crossed the border Wednesday evening and safely entered Turkmenistan. The evacuees include Korean residents, several embassy staff, and their family members, as well as some Iranian nationals who are relatives of Korean citizens. Among those who left Iran were Iranian women's national volleyball team coach Lee Do-hee and footballer Lee Gi-jae, who plays for an Iranian club. Meanwhile, 66 others in Israel were evacuated to Egypt. They departed Tel Aviv and Jerusalem on embassy-arranged buses, with additional short-term visitors joining them at the border, bringing the total to 113 evacuees. They have safely cleared the Israel-Egypt border crossing and will travel to Cairo, with support from embassy officials and a rapid response team dispatched from Seoul. The Foreign Ministry says it will continue exploring additional evacuation options if needed, and stressed it remains committed to ensuring the safety of South Korean nationals in the region. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok has also instructed officials to prepare measures for short-term travelers in the Middle East who are stranded due to airport closures, suggesting that military transport aircraft could be deployed if necessary.
I ask that you thoroughly prepare guidance for short-term visitors returning home, provide consular assistance, and ensure transportation plans are in place in case of emergencies.
The Defense Ministry says it's preparing to immediately deploy military transport aircraft if the government requests support. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Over in the Philippines, Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Ferdinand Marcos Jr. have agreed to expand cooperation on nuclear power, critical minerals, and the defense industry. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jang-min reports from Manila.
The summit in Manila began with an official welcome for the South Korean first couple, with the Korean folk song Arirang sung by a local choir. Tuesday's talks between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Ferdinand Marcos Jr. coincided with the anniversary of when the two countries established diplomatic relations 77 years ago. The leaders noted the sacrifice of troops sent from the Philippines during the Korean War.
대한민국의 자유와 평화를 위해서 목숨을 바쳐 함께 싸워준 우리 필리핀 참전 용사들에게 존경과 감사의 마음을 전합니다.
That bond, cemented in solidarity during very difficult times, continues to guide our strategic partnership.
Building upon the friendship, a pledge was made for cooperation in the defense industry, as well as promising sectors such as nuclear energy, critical minerals, shipbuilding, and AI.
필리핀 바탄 원전 재개 타당성 조사 결과 및 신규 원전 사업 도입 협력 MOU를 기초로 양국은 최적의 원전 협력 파트너로 자리매김하게 될 것입니다.
I expressed appreciation for the Republic of Korea's invaluable assistance and contributions to the modernization of our armed forces and strengthening of our Coast Guard, the investments that help revive our shipbuilding industry.
MOUs were signed for cooperation on a range of areas, including digital technology, science, Korean language, and cultural exchanges. The leaders also addressed peace on the Korean Peninsula and the conflict in the Middle East.
영내 정세와 함께 최근 중동의 상황에 대해서 논의하였고 중동의 안정과 평화가 조속히 회복되기를 소망하였습니다.
We both recognize the growing uncertainty in geopolitical developments. It is why we agreed on the need to firmly and consistently uphold a rules-based order governed by international law.
The South Korean first couple was later hosted by their Philippine counterparts for a state dinner. Top office officials say President Lee's trip is also aimed at reaching out to the broader ASEAN region at a time of increased global uncertainties. Yoon Jang-min, Arirang News, Manila.
And now for a closer look at what President Lee's trip to Southeast Asia signifies. We're joined today by Dr. Jeffrey Kalamak, Assistant Professor of Global Business Administration at Kyongsung University. So, Dr. Kalamak, President Lee held a summit with the President of the Philippines yesterday evening. What did you make of the meeting, and what does this latest trip signal about his approach to Southeast Asian countries?
First of all, thank you for having me. I would say that the meeting was productive, and the summit with the Philippines was focused on turning diplomatic goodwill into concrete cooperation in the areas of trade, digital and infrastructure ties, and deeper security and maritime collaboration. We see here that rather than symbolic gestures, the visit emphasized deliverables such as memoranda of understanding, frameworks for joint projects, and commitments to expand defense and technology cooperation. And this summit also reaffirmed Korea-Philippines FTA framework as a foundation for deeper economic engagement. And for the latest trip of President Lee, this signals his pursuit to ASEAN as pragmatic, results-oriented approach. It is practical, transactional diplomacy, and emphasize economic security linkage by using economic tools and investment to build influence, while at the same time also strengthening security partnerships where strategic interests align.
Right, and South Korea is one of the Philippines' major economic partners, and the Philippines is important to South Korea. In terms of military and economic security, how important is the Philippine market to South Korean businesses, especially defense firms?
For the defense market significance, there is a growing commercial opportunity and defense security demand, because the Philippines is an increasingly important market for Korean exports and defense suppliers. We have to understand that Manila's modernization and maritime security priorities create demand for naval vessels, surveillance systems, and defense electronics. And these are areas where Korean firms have competitive offerings. And for Korean businesses, the Philippines offers both procurement opportunities and I would like to say a chance to build regional supply chains and through local partnerships and offsets.
Right, and before heading to the Philippines, President Lee was in Singapore, and they agreed to strengthen cooperation in artificial intelligence and nuclear energy, and there was also an agreement to upgrade the bilateral free trade agreement between the two countries. How meaningful is this, and how crucial is the Singaporean market to South Korea?
A lot of things to discuss here. Well, there are three things that I need to elaborate here. Well, strengthening AI and nuclear cooperation and upgrading the FTA deepens Korea's access to regional capital, standards, and high-value partnerships. It was mentioned in the meeting about the starting to discuss about the Bataan nuclear power plant. And for the Singapore, as a market, we see and we know that it isn't a big consumer market because of its small population, but it is indispensable as a regional finance and innovation hub where Korea can channel capital, test policies, and connect with ASEAN startups. And I would like to believe that Singapore functions less as a mass market and more as a regional hub for finance, investments as well, and as I mentioned earlier, high-value services. For Korea, I think Singapore is a gateway to Southeast Asian capital. It's a place to base regional headquarters and a partner on regulatory and governance issues, especially in financial technology, data policy, and AI governance. So locating investment vehicles or joint initiatives in Singapore lets Korea tap sophisticated investors and a dense startup ecosystem across ASEAN. And let me just go back to the nuclear cooperation, AI cooperation, FTA upgrade. These moves are all strategic enablers. They create platforms. I have mentioned funds, regulatory alignment, joint projects that matter more for long-term influence and ecosystem access rather than immediate mass market sales.
Right, and on artificial intelligence, what President Lee also said is South Korea will establish a $300 million fund in Singapore by 2030, and you talked about long-term investments, and this is focusing on investing in AI startups. How significant is this, and what does this tell us about the administration's focus on AI?
Well, a dedicated fund amounting to $300 million signals that the administration sees AI as a strategic economic priority and is willing to use state-backed capital to catalyze private investment. And placing the fund in Singapore, I believe, is a smart move. It maximizes access to regional deal flow, experienced fund managers, and a favorable cross-border investment environment. Practically, the fund can help scale Korean and regional AI startups across partnerships and encourage talent exchanges. But here's a catch. Here is some kind of a limitation, or I would say barrier. The fund's real impact would depend on execution, how well it attracts private co-investors, the quality of deal sources, and governance that balances returns with strategic objectives.
I see. All right, Dr. Kalamak, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and have a nice day.
South Korea's currency briefly weakened past the key 1,500 won per US dollar mark overnight, its first breach of that level since the global financial crisis in 2009. The won fell to around 1,506 won for $1 shortly after the New York Stock Exchange opened Tuesday, as the US dollar strengthened amid ongoing US-Israel military operations against Iran. The currency later recovered to trade back below the 1,500 level. The last time the won reached that threshold was March 2009, when the global financial crisis pushed the Korean currency close to 1,600 won per dollar. And South Korea's financial authorities and the Bank of Korea are operating a 24-hour monitoring system to respond to the situation in the Middle East. The government on Tuesday said that it plans to utilize funds of 13.3 trillion Korean won, or around $9 billion for a financial support program to assist companies directly affected by the conflict. The Financial Services Commission stated it will proactively deploy its existing 100 trillion Korean won market stabilization fund if necessary. Meanwhile, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chang-yong convened a meeting to assess the global financial situation. The central bank is closely monitoring domestic financial and foreign exchange markets as they reopen, pledging timely market interventions based on specific contingency plans. The latest smartphones are becoming increasingly packed full of AI-integrated hardware and software features. Our business correspondent Park Junan takes us to the MWC 2026 trade show in Barcelona to cover the names that drew visitors' attention.
The Mobile World Congress 2026 in Barcelona is showcasing the rapid evolution of smartphones, with AI-integrated devices captivating tech enthusiasts from around the world. Among the standout attractions was from Chinese company Honor, which showed off its robot phone. The most creative feature was its attached robot camera, which includes an interactive AI camera module that tracks the user's movements, engages in conversation, and responds to requests such as playing a song while dancing.
Could you play me a song?
After listening to my question, it played an upbeat song and moved its camera module, dancing along to the music. The next stop was South Korea's biggest tech company, Samsung Electronics' latest smartphone S26 series, which features its Galaxy AI.
Smartphones are built to be smart, but with AI features, they could become much smarter.
The company emphasized advanced features like personalized suggestions, enhanced reminders, and agentic AI tools. One feature that got a lot of attention was the privacy display on the S26 Ultra, which limits the viewing angle to prevent others from peeking, made possible by controlling light diffusion at the hardware level. Yet amid the excitement over these AI capabilities, questions arise about whether their premium pricing truly justifies the innovations and whether these capabilities meaningfully improve daily life. The Galaxy S26 Ultra starts at around $1,300 in the US, while China's ultra-premium lineups cost up to $2,000 to $3,000. This contrasts with American tech giant Apple, which took the opposite approach with its March announcement of the more affordable iPhone 17e, starting at $599.
So AI is the future, and we really have to adopt it because it will make our lives really, really easy. But it's very important that we are offering solutions for everyone and that we can bring value to people that are willing to spend 200 or are willing to spend more.
The takeaway from MWC 2026 is clear. AI is becoming a visible partner. And from trifold designs that expand screen space to cinema-grade lenses developed through collaborations with luxury camera brands, hardware is being designed with AI in mind. Park Junan, Arirang News, Barcelona.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. The Israeli military on Tuesday said it destroyed a secret underground nuclear headquarters in Tehran. The Israel Defense Forces identified the target as Min Zadai, a facility they claim Iran used to develop nuclear weapons knowledge. This strike follows the recent killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and several top military commanders. Iran has been making efforts to move more of its weapons development underground since June 2025. President Donald Trump on Tuesday threatened to sever all trade ties with Spain after Madrid blocked U.S. warplanes from using its military bases for strikes on Iran. The U.S. president ordered the Treasury Department to cut off all dealings with Madrid, citing a Supreme Court ruling to justify a full trade embargo. This comes after Spain's socialist leadership forced the relocation of 15 U.S. aircraft from military bases in southern Spain. Trump further criticized Spain for failing to meet NATO's increased defense spending targets of 5% of GDP. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz joined the pressure campaign, urging Spain to comply with regional security obligations. In the U.S., the father of a teenager responsible for a high school massacre has been convicted of second-degree murder. A jury in the state of Georgia found that Colin Gray was criminally responsible for the September 2024 shooting at Appalachia High School after he gave his son an assault rifle. Prosecutors proved that Gray purchased the weapon as a Christmas gift, despite knowing his son's deteriorating mental health and obsession with past school shooters. Gray now faces up to 30 years in prison. 2 students and 2 teachers were killed in the attack. In Iran, panic-driven investors moved millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency out of Iranian exchanges immediately after U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on Saturday. Blockchain researchers at Chainalysis and Elliptic tracked over $10 million in outflows between Saturday and Monday as the conflict intensified. In the single hour following the first reports of explosions, funds leaving Iranian platforms spiked 8-fold, hitting nearly $3 million. Experts say the surge is a combination of capital flight by ordinary citizens and state-aligned actors attempting to shield assets from geopolitical risk. Iran's annual crypto volume is estimated to be up to $11 billion.
We are expecting some fine early spring weather today, as long as we are aware of significant temperature difference between morning and afternoon. And some of the inland areas had sub-zero morning temperatures, but most parts of Korea will have sunny skies and clean air during the day. However, dust in the air will gradually build up from the late afternoon, with dust from overseas blowing into the country. West of the central regions will see bad dust levels lingering into tomorrow morning. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 11 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju, Busan will be topping out at 13 degrees. Then tomorrow will be even milder during the day. However, rain will begin tomorrow night in the central regions and Jeollado, gradually spreading nationwide the following day. And after the rain system moves out, morning temperatures will drop below freezing in most parts over the weekend.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.